Ladies and gentlemen, I am Israel, the game is World of Warships, and welcome to Faultline in Domination Mode. Those of you who've been watching my videos will be aware that I have a little bit of a pet hate, and that pet hate is carrier aircraft. My main tech tree line is the Japanese destroyers. I'm going to excuse it based on trauma from having fighter planes overhead spotting me, and there's nothing I can do about it. So, when someone pops up on the subreddit and asks me if I'm interested in a Royal Navy replay that involves 43 dead aircraft, oh yeah, I'm interested. This is Bloody Soul Reaper. He's in the British Tier 7 light cruiser, the Fiji, and, as I said, he is going to run up 43 air kills in the course of this battle, and that's not even the main event. He does it almost by accident, which is actually kind of impressive, because Fiji, like the other British light cruisers, isn't really thought of as a flagship. She's got an impressive flak suite for the tier, but it's mostly self-defense focused. She hasn't got defensive fire, she tends not to go for builds that involve anti-air and emphasise it, so you tend not to see AA Mod 2 or manual control of AA guns in the builds, for example. So, 43 air kills, oh yeah, that's kinda impressive, and it's not even the main event. This is Domination, and what we're seeing to start with is a fairly standard opening strategy. Destroyers are probing all three cap points, the light cruisers are just behind to back them up, and there are two carriers on each team, which means that any second now we are going to see the first waves of enemy aircraft. And here they come, 1, 2, 3 US dive bomber squadrons and a torpedo bomber squadron. Right, that Ranger over on the enemy team is running a strike loadout, we can tell that much immediately. Good news, no enemy fighters. Bad news, 18 dive bombers and 6 torpedo bombers, and they're all going for Theodorus 41, clearly emphasising the need to take out the enemy destroyers early. Unfortunately, the bombers miss, and Theodorus manages to torpedo beat through the salvos, so he gets through the worst of it, and critically, the Ranger driver recalls all his planes to reload. Why is that a mistake? Well, if he'd left one of the dive bombers loitering over the Akatsuki to provide spotting data, the enemy battleship line, which is currently on the far side of that island, would have been able to use that data to fire into point A. Probably wouldn't have done any serious damage, but even a couple of hits would have seriously delayed the cap. And when you consider that there's a Budioni, a Koenig, a Gneisenau, a New Mexico, and a Fossau over there, well, what Soul Reaper has just tried and someone else just did to the Budioni would have been a significant inconvenience, to say the least. However, the carrier driver didn't loiter one of his squadrons, so no spotting data means that the enemy are completely blind as to Soul Reaper and Doris's locations. They've got the old locations, of course, but backlogger, that's going to do them, and caps A and C have fallen to the green team, so they're 2 points to 0 up. The bad news, however, is that their Fubuki over in point B has gotten into a brawl with a Meihan, and while Fubuki will always try her best against a US destroyer that's always one tier high, yeah, that's how it tends to end, especially in a close-range guns brawl. So, first blood to the enemy. Meanwhile, it's not going quite so well for the enemy over here. Ita 76 in the Graf Spee had his guns pointing the wrong way when he came round that corner. Can't blame him for being focused up on the enemy battleship over there. A Gneisenau is generally pretty intimidating, but, well, when you clear a corner and you run into an enemy light cruiser and a destroyer, it helps if your guns are pointing this way instead. As it is, by the time he got the guns round, Soul Reaper was smoked up, Doris had fired torpedoes, and, well, he does manage to control the flooding, but all that does is give his crew time to get to the lifeboats, because Soul Reaper puts him down with a couple of salvos of 6-inch gunfire. Both Doris and Soul Reaper are smoked up at this point, so the spotting on that Budioni is actually coming from the battleships behind them. Not that that's much consolation to the Budioni, who gave flat side to Soul Reaper and was very lucky not to get citadeled in that salvo. As it is, he still took 5,000 damage, he's on 13,000 and is probably severely regretting his decision to come round that corner. The bad news, however, is that the Rangers' bombers are back. Mass salvo again, and they're loitering overhead. This is something I did not understand at all. I initially thought he was going to try manually dropping onto the flashes from Soul Reaper's flak, but it actually looks like he was waiting for the smoke to expire and misjudged the timer. The consequence being that he's loitering in Soul Reaper's close flak zone, and then he decides to go off and chase some battleships instead, having lost 3 or 4 bombers already. And, well, then he drives into the flak zones of 2 Bayerns, a Congo, and a Königsberg. So yeah, he loses quite a few more bombers trying that. Meanwhile, back over with Soul Reaper, he's got a König that's run itself aground, trying to make a turn for broadside. People will leave islands in the most inconvenient locations, and his smoke picks this moment to fade. Amazingly, nobody seems to have noticed because his priority target isn't showing any lock-ons, but with bombers overhead, it's still a good moment to jam on the gas, yell down at the engine room for more power and slam over the rudder to try to avoid these torpedoes, and ooh, he actually hit that second torpedo as well as the one he caught on a square hit, but that König, yeah, he's about to eat a torpedo as well. Again, a very narrow clip, but critically it's caused flooding. So, Soul Reaper is trying his best to evade the fire from the Budyonny. I'm amazed that König hasn't fired at him, but he is locked on. Budyonny goes behind, now he's got 2 lock-ons from priority target. König has fired high explosive and missed completely, so I'm not sure what he was trying to do. He can probably get away with flat side for a few more seconds. He's got to, really, in order to make this turn. The Budyonny fires. He was very lucky that that went long. Another salvo into the König, but watch the damage numbers. The König hasn't controlled the flooding from that torpedo. Oh dear. How sad. Never mind. So, 1 König down. We've got the Budyonny and Karl OX1 in the Nyes now. And if they're staging a distraction, over to the left, we have actually got Zekan, I think I pronounced that correctly, in the Fosso. It's not a bad plan if this was deliberate. Nyes now, Ryujo and Budyonny get the green team's attention. Fosso comes around the corner and delivers the good news with 12 14-inch guns. Not a bad plan, except that, well, that's a Fosso. And when you've got the Goddess of Misfortune as your ship with a 18-kilometre spotting range, stealth is kinda not an option. The Fosso is therefore taking a bit of a beating. He has got the Bayern who's turning and, well, isn't quite looking the right way, but he's trying to get the stern guns round and stay angled. More to the point, there's a Königsberg over here for Tanasavi, who has just put torpedoes in the water. First salvo is out, and that is going to miss a stern. So Zekan is probably thanking his lucky stars at this point, but the Königsberg has 2 torpedo launchers on each side of the hull. Second salvo away, widespread. Zekan's trying to torpedo it. He's got the rudder over. Is he going to make it? Is he going to make it? No, he isn't. Such misfortune. Meanwhile, the Budyonny, for some reason, decided it was going to charge through the suicide gap occupied by the wreck of the König into a Tier 7 British light cruiser with AP and a Kongu-class battleship. That ended, well, you saw how it ended. It was actually a slightly surprising decision. He might have perhaps been better off pulling back, going for long-range shots using his spotter plane and just volleying fire over the island, trying to get fires and maybe the odd penetration on the Fiji. Which just leaves a suddenly rather lonely Nyes now. He's still technically got the Ryujo over there backing him up, but, well, Ryujo, well, she has got secondaries. The aircraft launching destroyer is not really the best ship for a close-range brawl. At all, in fact. So the Nyes now is effectively on his own. Which means that he's got some targets. He's locked on to Soul Reaper at the moment. We can see that from priority target, but, well, he's got worse problems to think about. Take a quick glance at the Ryujo. No, not worth the shot. The Nyes now's the more important target at the moment. Get the stern turrets round, giving a nice tempting view of the broadside there, but 15-inch guns means that you can kind of risk it at this range. German accuracy is not great, and if you're careful to wiggle, as Soul Reaper is doing, chances are most of the shells are going to miss anyway. Why that Nice Now is firing high X, I have no idea. Unfortunately, the Ryujo's bombers are not in the business of missing, and they proceed to start a fire. He controls it immediately with damage control, figuring that behind this island, well, the Nice Now can't shoot at him. The Ryujo then has a bit of bad luck, although from our perspective it's a bit of good luck. Torpedo bombers come down onto the Kongo. 5 torpedoes out, 2 of them hit, 3 misses, and if they'd just been a few feet to the left, that Ryujo might have been in line for a double strike. Meanwhile, Carlo X1 is back under Soul Reaper's guns, and a little note about the shell performance here. You'll notice that he's getting bounces, he's getting shatters, and he's getting regular penetrations. He is not getting over penetration, and that's of course because of the British light cruiser's relatively fast fused AP. If you fire it into a battleship superstructure, it tends to act very much like High X. No fires, but because it tends to burst inside the superstructure from the fast fusing, it tends to give you the 1/3 damage penetrations rather than over penetrating for 10%. He's on fire from that last dive bomber strike. He has got 2 more waves of dive bombers coming in. Second wave comes down from the Ranger. He slams his damage control to control 2 fires, and then in a matter of 0.3 of a second is very lucky that the 3rd wave from that Ranger also caused a fire that was immediately controlled by the same Damcon, or he would have been burning full duration. He was on 7,000 health. That would have been very, very messy with both damage control and repair party on cooldown. Back onto the duel with Nice now, who is at this point not locked onto him. In fact, he's getting personal with the breadboard. So, rounds out, he actually tries for a shot on Ryujo here and gets a citadel, amazingly. He must have clipped the hangar deck in order to do that. Another salvo into the Ryujo, aims a bit further forward this time, and another 2 citadels sends flight deck chests down to the bottom. Unfortunately, she got her bombers into the air. Now, those are probably auto-dropping, but even so, that Ryujo, yeah, there we go. Another 1,000 damage. The Rangers dive bombers come down. I'm not sure whether it was the Rangers bombers or a shell from the Nice Now that caused that last fire. But Soul Reaper smokes up, and, well, he can't afford to take any more hits from that Nice Now. It's that simple. So, damage control stops the burn, and at this point he is just volleying armor piercing into the Nice Now superstructure. Again, watch the shell mechanics on the right hand side. He gets bounces, he gets regular penetrations, and he's getting shatters, but, well, since nothing is over-penetrating, he is still doing up to 5,000 damage every 6 seconds or so. Another salvo down, 2,500 damage. Nice Now torpedo beats, but that forces him to go broadside. He dumps some speed, 6-inch comes down, bit more damage, final salvo. Rounds come down, pops his repair party. Okay, not quite the final salvo, but, well, that Nice Now is gone. And there we go. As I said, absolutely no overpens, and, well, that's really the secret for British cruisers when you're dealing with a battleship. Hit the superstructure repeatedly. Nice Now's gone. The left flank has fallen, and they are some almost 600 points up. This is pretty much in the bag. But that Ranger's bombers are back again. He really, really wants Soul Reaper dead, and I can't blame him, since right now Soul Reaper is only 11 kilometers away and closing rapidly. The fighters do turn up, little bit late guys, but hey, at least the Brill Cream boys bothered to show. Salvo into the Ranger, guns away, another wave of dive bombers coming in. You can tell the effect that plane losses have had on the Ranger at this point. His dive bomber waves are being staggered, so they're having to run the gauntlet of the flak 1 squadron at a time. That means they're getting focused 1 squadron at a time, and with the fighters turned up and disrupting their bomb attacks, it is frankly surprising that they're landing any hits at all, much less 2 hits and 2 fires, which is highly inconvenient since, once again, Soul Reaper is on fire has 45 seconds on his damcon and 23 seconds on his repair party. This could be the end, especially since something just lobbed shells in his general direction. There are 2 enemy cruisers over there, a Königsberg and a Belfast. We'll be seeing more of them later. For the moment, though, he is focused on the Ranger, whose bomber crews are apparently equipped with regulation issue steel balls if they can manage that kind of accuracy while under fire from enemy fighters. Repair party comes out. That is just about going to stabilise the damage from that fire, but his torpedo bombers are inbound as well. They come into the flak zone. Outer flak zone opens up. That's 102mm guns. The fighters are coming in. Can the Brill Cream boys disrupt that torpedo run? Probably, but that's really not the point. There's still 4 bombers flying. Damage control is out. The fire is stopped. Those torpedo bombers are still trying for a drop, but the flak finally finds its mark. Fighters get 1. There's only 1 torpedo bomber left, and he goes down without a launch. I have to assume that the Ranger was trying an automatic launch there, or just made a complete klutz of the manual drop, because those torpedoes should have been in the water much quicker than they were. However, in the interim, he's got his dive bombers back in the air, and they're grouped up this time. That's 12 bombers coming in. Bloody Soul Reaper pops his final smoke, disappears. He's still getting spotting data from that final torpedo bomber, but that torpedo bomber's got to leg it. He can't stay in the Ranger's flak for very long or he's just going to die. So in a second, Soul Reaper is going to lose his spotting on the Ranger, at least once these friendly fighters pull out as well. The real problem, however, isn't the bombers. We've already seen that, well, okay, that was a manual drop, but they missed completely. The real problem is that there is a Königsberg closing up behind him, 8 kilometers, and I don't think Soul Reaper had quite seen him. He was focused on the Ranger. The Ranger's disappeared, however, and he's definitely seen the Königsberg now. That's not really the problem, however. He's in smoke. The Königsberg is 7 kilometers away. Hydro is not going to be an issue. 6.7, 6.6. Königsberg's going to have to close down to about 5.5 to use Hydro. So Soul Reaper starts to tiptoe away in smoke. 6.5. That Königsberg's actually going broadside. Soul Reaper lines up a shot, fires, rounds out. Who put that island there? Damn it, gets himself the high caliber to go with his Confederate, bags another plane, and then disaster strikes. The Belfast has shown up, and that is a radar lock. Soul Reaper fires into the Königsberg. He's only got 2,700 health. He gets a Citadel, gets the last broadside away, but the Belfast's radar was his doom. He does, however, get immediate revenge on the Königsberg by nailing him for a Kraken unleashed, and just a flesh wound as a bonus, which leaves a Belfast on 1,051 points facing a very angry full health Bayern. And yes, that is going to end exactly how you think it's going to end. The Belfast, in fairness, is making the best of a bad job here. It's actually surprisingly even. It's down to 2 carriers and a battleship versus a carrier, the Belfast, and a destroyer, who, by the way, we know is over in Point A, and, well, these dive bombs are about the only thing that's going to be able to deal with him. Incidentally, yes, it's a Fubuki, who, well, she's not going to swing the game back. They are 260 points down. There's a minute 18 left on the clock. Basically, this is going to come down to kills. And in particular, the Belfast, who is still tiptoeing around, has somehow got to kill the Bayern. And then the Hiryu, in the space of 62 seconds. No, it's not going to happen, is it? So all that is left to do is go down swinging in the best traditions of the Royal Navy. Although, well, the Royal Navy does have a tendency for not running from fights ever since we shot an admiral on his own quarterdeck on an allegation of cowardice. Although some people would point out that Bing's court-martial was something of a fiasco. Belfast gets shots out into the Bayern, but, well, railguns from the bow. It only needed 1 hit, and the German 15-inch didn't go wrong on that occasion. And that is basically that. With 20 seconds left on the clock, there is no way that the enemy are going to pull back a 260-point deficit, or the 3 kills that they need to swing the tide. So, game over, and a thoroughly deserved win to Bloody Soul Reaper and his team. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the post-battle screen makes for fairly impressive reading. Just over 10,000 XP after bonuses, 150,000 damage off 378 main battery hits, the Rampage trifecta, and a Flesh Wound medal to round things out. As far as the damage screen goes, that's actually more interesting. He got almost 41,000 damage on that Knives now, just from repeatedly hitting its superstructure. 22,000 damage on the Ranger that got away, 12,000 on the Ryujo that he sank, 15,000 on the Graf. Granted, that torpedo from the Akatsuki did a good chunk of the work. Less than you'd have thought, however, given the timing of those hits. 17,000 on the Königsberg and 28,000 on the König that ran itself aground. Worth noting that of the König, 8,000 came from the torpedo hit, 12,500 came from the flooding that he couldn't control, and only about, 8,000 or so came from hits into the ship from artillery itself. Just over 50% accuracy, and of course 34 dead dive bombers, 9 dead torpedo bombers, and 3 dead fighters for 46 aircraft in total. One of those games that really makes you sit up and gives weight to the theory that the British light cruise line gets okay-ish at the Tier 6 Leander and really hits its stride once it goes up to 12 guns at the Tier 7 Fiji. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been Yusril. That has been Bloody Soul Reaper in the Tier 7 Fiji light cruiser, and until next time, farewell.